Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're doing something kind of different. We're going to play digital archaeologists. We usually think of history as these massive, dusty books, right? But today, history is basically tagged, categorized, and filed away online. We're actually going to reconstruct a whole 16th century life using literally just one incredibly sparse digital archive. It is absolutely wild to see how simple digital metadata can paint this super vivid and honestly kind of tragic human portrait. So here's the challenge. We're looking at a Wikimedia Commons repository for a guy named Baz Bahadur. And get this, there are exactly 15 media files in the entire category. Literally just 15. That's the whole shebang. That's all we've got to piece together this guy's legacy. But as you'll see, when we actually unpack these file names and categories, it's not just dry data. It unfolds into this deeply dramatic, three-act tragedy of a ruler's life. Okay, let's dive right into this. Act 1, the Sovereign of Malwa. Right off the bat, before we even get into the artwork, the raw biographical metadata gives us a baseline. His primary name is Baz Bahadur, but check out this much grander title, Mian Bayezid Baz Bahadur Khan. His occupation, politician, and more specifically, Sultan. And it lists his residence as the Baz Bahadur Mahal. So just from a few lines of code, basically, we get this picture of a major political player, a sovereign ruler who had a literal palace named after him. Being tagged under sultans and history of Madhya Pradesh, well, that firmly roots him as a regional powerhouse. But when exactly did he hold all this power? The archive broadly says 16th century, but there's one specific file named Sultan Baz Bahadur of Malwa R 1555-61 that really anchors our narrative. That little R dot is crucial. It tells us his time at the very top, running the Malwa Sultanate, was actually a super narrow window. We're talking just 6 years. And within that tiny window, we find some heavy-hitting evidence of his authority. Among our 15 files, we've got a coin of Baz Bahadur and silver coin of Baz Bahadur of Malwa. Now, why does that matter? Because you don't just get to mint your own silver currency unless you are the one pulling all the economic and political strings. This is hard, physical proof of his sovereignty. In Act I of our archive, make no mistake, Baz Bahadur is undeniably the king. But then, the historical data takes a really unexpected turn. Act 2, Romance and the Hunt. You'd think an archive of a sultan would be all, court scenes and treaties and stuff. Nope. His personal life totally hijacks the narrative. The metadata lists his spouse as Roopmati, or Rani Roopmati. And let me tell you, she is not just a footnote. She completely dominates the visual artifacts right alongside him. It's like the archive is insisting, hey, you cannot understand Baz Bahadur without understanding Rani Roopmati. I mean, just look at the titles of these files. There's one, originally a Russian entry, translated literally as Lovers in Seclusion Under Moonlight. Wow, right? Think about the stark contrast there. We go from that dry, bureaucratic, occupation, politician metadata straight into this deeply poetic, incredibly romanticized slice of his life. And this romance is really the beating heart of his historical memory. We have files from the Google Art Project and LACMA showing them constantly together doing stuff. Baz Bahadur and Roopmati hunting, Baz Bahadur and Roopmati riding on horses with attendants. The digital record doesn't care about him sitting on a throne. It remembers him out in the world, side by side with the woman he loved. It's honestly beautiful. Now, what's really fascinating here is how fast that piece is shattered. Act 3, Defeat by the Mughals. Just as we're getting swept up in the moonlight and the hunting trips, boom, everything hinges on the year 1561. Like we noted earlier, that's exactly when his short reign hits a brick wall, and the artwork titles in the repository capture this end with absolutely devastating finality. The files suddenly shift to things like the defeat of Baz Bahadur of Malwa by the Mughal troops, 1561. But here is the real kicker. There is a category tag attached to his page, People of the Akbarnama. Now, the Akbarnama is the official history of the massive Mughal Empire under Akbar, so by getting filed in that specific category, Baz Bahadur is literally reduced to being a supporting character in a rival emperor's story. His independent sovereignty? Poof, completely erased by the metadata. And it culminates in probably the most tragic file name in the whole collection. Baz Bahadur flees Mandu. It's a stark, brutal reality check. Remember that grand palace we talked about, the Baz Bahadur Mahal? Yeah, this file tells us he had to abandon it. He's running for his life from the exact same territory where he used to stamp his own name on silver coins. So when we pull back and look at these 15 files as a whole, we get this wildly dual legacy preserved in the archive. On one hand, you've got the romantic, serene paintings, lovers in seclusion, hunting in the countryside with Rani Roopmati. And on the other hand, the vanquished, violent records of a defeated man, fleeing his home in 1561, totally absorbed into the conqueror's history book. It is absolutely fascinating how historical memory works, isn't it? Through just 15 digital artifacts, a few meta tags, some scanned coins, some museum paintings, we've watched a man rise as a sovereign, live out a legendary romance, and lose literally everything to an advancing empire. It leaves us with a pretty big question to end today's explainer. When your entire complex human life is ultimately boiled down to a handful of digital tags, how will history file you? As a powerful ruler, a devoted lover, or just a fleeting footnote in somebody else's greater story? Thanks so much for joining me on this digital excavation, guys, and always keep questioning the history behind the data.